Thanks for tuning in to another video to help you explore endlessly, to play wildly, and to connect deeply. Today, I'm talking about breath. Now, breath is something that over the last few years has become widely talked about. There have been a few books released that have become very, very popular. A lot of podcasts, Huberman, Rich Roll, Joe Rogan, Lewis Howes, Willink, tons of podcasts on breath. And I understand why. Breath is readily available. It's a zero-cost way to increase your health, performance, and self-awareness. But with all that being said, it can be quite confusing. There's a lot of information. It's hard to distill down, especially on our own. I remember reading Breath by James Nestor and thinking, what do I do now? Aside from breathing through my nose and breathing more slowly, I wasn't sure what to do next. I didn't understand how to apply it to my sport, my athleticism, or how to help my clients breathe in a more effective way. So I've done a lot of my own research, read a lot of books, taken a few courses, worked with some incredible athletes, coaches, and teachers to expand my knowledge of breath in a way that could help me as an athlete and my clients in their athleticism. And over the years, I've learned some pretty cool stuff, both through my own personal practice and protocols with my clients. Ways that through these simple practices, we can increase our available oxygen, decrease our stress, and regulate, meaning calm or excite, our nervous system. So this video is all about understanding breath through 3 concepts that really helped me and my clients to understand a way that they can be more aware of their breath, to apply it to their training, and apply it to their sport. And you can implement practices into your daily routine or your weekly training program that will help you to increase your awareness, your mindfulness, the intent, the effectiveness of breath in your sport and your activity. Number 1 is the mechanism of breathing. Now, pretty simple stuff here. We breathe in oxygen, hopefully through our nose, most of the time. Breathe into our lungs. From our lungs, that air moves throughout our body. There are 2 main muscles that help us breathe, our intercostals and our diaphragm. For most people, we're breathing quite passively. And a lot of the time, that's a short, shallow breath. When we breathe these short, shallow breaths, we're not using our diaphragm and our intercostals to the effectiveness, to the efficiencies that we could use them. So here's an example. If I take a big inhale into my belly moves out and I exhale and I let that go. That's a more mindful diaphragmatic breath. I'm using my diaphragm, which expands, moving my ribs up and outward. We can train these muscles, our diaphragm and intercostals, training our respiratory efficiency to help us breathe a little bit more deeply, a little bit more mindfully, and a little bit more slowly, which we'll get to later. The second part I want you to think about the mechanism of breathing is, where am I breathing? Many people who are breathing short, shallow breaths are breathing up into their chest. But there's a lot of benefit in breathing into the belly, but also into the ribs and mindfully into the chest. In yoga, there's a breath practice called 3-part breath, where we breathe into belly, ribs, and chest. I love this breath practice, not for the pranayama practice itself, though it is great, but I love using it and teaching it to clients to help them understand that if you can't breathe into your belly in a plank, well, we're really not being as efficient as we possibly could. But if we can breathe into our belly, maybe even our ribs, and a lot of movements that are helping us build our endurance for sport, well, then we can take that breathing pattern and apply it to the sport itself. Those are very fundamental, very basic ways to think about the mechanisms of breathing. What are the muscles and where in my body am I breathing? Secondly, CO2, carbon dioxide, in relation to overbreathing. Now, we've heard this term a lot, overbreathing. If you've read James Nestor's fantastic book, Breath, you understand the risks, the health risks to overbreathing. Essentially, most of us are overbreathing. We're breathing, again, shallow, oftentimes through the mouth, which I won't get into the risks of overbreathing in this video, but I do want to talk about what's happening if we're overbreathing in relation to carbon dioxide. So here's an example, hyperventilating. If we go inhale, exhale, and we do that really fast, we often start to feel tingly, maybe lightheaded, and we think, oh my gosh, I have so much oxygen going to my brain. Not particularly the case. What's happening is you're blowing off too much carbon dioxide. We need carbon dioxide in order for the exchange of oxygen. It's part of what's called the Bohr effect. So if I inhale air and I expel carbon dioxide, if I'm breathing really quickly, I'm blowing off, I'm expelling too much carbon dioxide. I'm being very inefficient with my breathing, thus very inefficient with the oxygen exchange that's happening in my body. I want to slow down my breath, which will build your carbon dioxide tolerance, and it will help increase the total oxygen transfer that's happening throughout your body. So let's think about this in terms of sport. The harder you're pushing, the harder you're breathing. And the harder you're breathing, the more rapidly you're breathing, the faster that exchange needs to happen. But if your carbon dioxide tolerance is low, there's a pretty good chance that you're blowing off more carbon dioxide than you need to. So if we look at 1 and 2 together, training our respiratory efficiency, our diaphragm, our intercostals, and mindful of where in the body we're breathing, also slowing it down, we can increase our CO2 tolerance, which means more oxygen exchange throughout our body, and decrease risk of hyperventilating or breathing too fast in our sport. The third concept that I want to share when it comes to breath is our nervous system. Most of us know about our nervous system, and many of us know about our autonomic nervous system. We've probably heard about sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic being our fight or flight, our fight or freeze, where we get jacked up, where we feel alert, focused, driven, and our parasympathetic being more rest and digest, calm, collected, grounded, easy to connect, more compassionate, more creative. There's something called downregulation to the parasympathetic and upregulation to the sympathetic. Now, without getting into the weeds too much here, into regulating the nervous system, if you're interested in this, there's tons of information out there on it. I want to talk about this through the lens of the athlete, because both of those states are important. Let's take, for example, you just finished a really hard workout. You went for it, you got after it, you pushed it, you lifted some heavy weight, you pushed hard, VO2 max work, hit some intervals. You are upregulated. You are up in that sympathetic. So taking some time at the end of that workout to downregulate, to do a very easily accessible downregulation breathing practice is a great way to bring yourself back down after being upregulated. You don't really want to go back into the world being all fired up, because it's just going to be a bit too hard on the system. On the other hand, the other way I want you to think about this is if you were to go for a bike ride or a trail run, and you've been out there a while and you're looking at the birds and the trees and the beautiful moss and what a beautiful place we live in. I get this way all the time. I'm on a bike ride, I'm on the climb trail, it's beautiful, it's calming, it's relaxing, it's lovely, but then I get to the trailhead, it's a double black diamond, and I have to drop in. So in that scenario, I often take an upregulating breathing practice to help bring myself up to a more alert, focused state. I've also had clients do this in their ultra marathon races where when they start to fatigue, they get to a technical section in the trail, but they can do some upregulating breathing to help in that moment get them focused on what they're doing and refocus into the trail and into their body. So I want to use one more example when it comes to the endurance athlete. Because if you're spending all day doing an activity, hiking, running, biking, climbing, skiing, you name it, if you're doing it for a long time and you're not mindful of your breath, you may be breathing through your mouth at a very high rate. High respiration every minute. So think, and you're doing that all day long. That is a long time to spend in the sympathetic state of your nervous system, upregulated. So keep that in mind. If you can be mindful of your breath and apply it to those big bouts outdoors, you're going to feel way better. Your tissue is going to feel better. Your recovery is going to be shorter. So hopefully you have a better understanding of breath, a foundational understanding of breath in terms of those three different concepts, the mechanisms that we use, muscles and where in our body we can breathe, CO2, and overbreathing and the risks of overbreathing, and nervous system, and how we can manage the excitability of our body, our nervous system, and our brain, both in activity, in sport, but also throughout your day. So hopefully this foundational understanding of breath helps the tools make a little bit more sense, and why the workshops and the private coaching can make such a huge difference in your athleticism and your daily life. Make sure you're signed up for my newsletter. Thank you for tuning in. Breathe deeply, play wildly. I'll see you on the trails. Peace out.